Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It's a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. I'm out for a stroll before I buckle down for work for the day and enjoying the early morning sun. It's about 8 o'clock and the weather is beautiful. Much cooler than you'd expect for mid-August. I would expect this weather in mid-June or even late June maybe, but mid-August it feels very cool for this temperature. It's nice. It's a good treat given how hot it's been lately. Well, I thought I would talk to you today about some new games I've played because it's been a little bit since I've done that. So here we go. This is a Board Game Espresso Triple Shot. For those of you new to the podcast, Board Game Espresso Triple Shot is a short review segment in which I talk about 3 games I've played recently for the first time or maybe once or twice, and then 1 game that I've dusted off. It's not intended to be full reviews because I've only played these games once or twice. It's first impressions. And with that, let's jump in. First game I want to talk about today is Metro. I believe that Metro was published by Queen Games and the designer is Dirk Henn. I'm going to double check that here. Yes, Metro is currently published by Queen Games, and the designer is Dirk Henn. This is a relatively simple tile placement game in which you are creating and perpetuating train lines. Think about Tsuro, for example, as a very similar game, or Indigo from Reiner Knizia. Both these games involve laying out tiles that have a bunch of lines on them, and how the lines connect can result in you gaining points or not. It uses square tiles, as I recall, rather than the hexagons that you see in Indigo. And in Metro, you have a number of train cars that are sitting on the edge of the board. When your train line gets connected to an endpoint, you get that many points. And your train runs and is no longer on the board. Your goal is basically to connect your train lines to places that you'll get lots of points, or as often or more often to short circuit other people's train lines so that they won't get very many points. It's a pretty mean game. You can gain a lot of headway by significantly attacking other players. There are stations along the side and in the middle of the board, and basically you're just getting points for connecting your trains to the stations that have the most points. You also get points for how many tiles your train passes through on its way to the final station. So having a train that takes a longer route is also good for you. It's a fine little game. It's a nice abstract. It takes about 20 minutes to play, probably, once you all know how to play. So it's a good filler. I did not really enjoy it. It's entirely too mean to me. It seems like really the good strategy is do as well as you can to help your trains, but keep an eye out where you can screw other people. And screwing other people seems to be the more effective strategy, especially if everyone's doing it. I mean, if everyone else is just working on their own, you might not get very far because one person can't move the lever the whole way. And if you're not working on your own, then yours might get routed badly just by happenstance with the other players working on theirs. But all in all, it's a game where it's way too easy to be mean to other players for my taste. So that's Dirk Henn Metro, also published apparently as Cable Car, available from Queen Games. Looks like it was 1997 is the publishing date. So it's been out for at least a few minutes. But I have seen it still in print, so it must be at least somewhat reliable as a seller for Queen Games, or they printed way too many and you're buying a game that's 25 years old when you buy it from them. Next up we have Samurai. This is a game from Reiner Knizia. It's been published a number of times. We played the original edition, which I think was Rio Grande. If you go on Board Game Geek, the latest edition is from Fantasy Flight, but I'm not sure if they have another one available or not. This is a pretty classic Reiner Knizia area control game. In the game, you have tiles, a hand of tiles, and you pick up more from your personal supply after you play them. And on these tiles, you have certain kinds of control that you are waging. You have control over one of 3 different types of resource, and you have a sort of universal control tile. When you play the tile onto the board, you are exerting control on the spaces around it. So if you play a card exerting control over the pyramids because there's little abstract pieces. I don't remember what the different, one of them is like grain, one of them is population, so on. You're exerting different kinds of control. When you exert control over one of the pieces with your tile next to it, it goes until that tile is surrounded, and then whomever has the most control over it, over that piece, gets that piece. You can also play these wild pieces that can gain control over multiple ones, and in fact some of the individual resource tiles could gain control over multiple spaces because there are some tiles that are separated by one space, so you could put one in between that tries to get control of both. The tiles that you play have different multipliers on them. After a location is completely surrounded by tiles, then you evaluate who has the most influence over each of the little resource tokens on that tile, and whoever has the most resource takes those tokens. At the end of the game, it's a pretty simple win condition. You check for each kind of token who has the most of those tokens. If there's a player who has the most, they get the emblem for that kind of resource. Then, if there's somebody else who has the most of the next one, they get the emblem for that resource. After you've evaluated all three resources, then you check, is there anyone who has more emblems than everybody else? If there is, they win. So if there's anybody who gets 2 emblems, they win. In our case, I believe one player got 1 emblem and the other players did not get any, because if it's a tie, nobody gets the emblem. So then that player who got the 1 emblem wins. It's an interesting game, or maybe I didn't get any emblems and 2 of the other players got emblems and there's a tiebreaker. I don't recall. But that's how it works, is whoever gets the most emblems wins. Otherwise, there's a tiebreaker based on other things. I think based on how many resources of the other 2 types you have for the tiebreaker. That is Samurai. Like I said, it's been in a couple of editions. There was a Fantasy Flight edition, as well as I believe a Rio Grande / Hans im Glück edition. Classic Reiner Knizia game. Interesting. I wouldn't put it at the top of my list, but happily play it anytime someone brings it out. And if I found it at Goodwill, I would absolutely buy it. I don't know how cheap it would have to be for me to buy it new. But it's a cute little game. Next up is the game I dusted off. This is Perseverance. Perseverance is from Mind Clash Games. It came out in 2022, and it was a big old Kickstarter, and it had a gimmick where it was 2 games in one, and the idea is there's going to be 4 games altogether that represent a progression. So game 1, the premise is a cruise liner has gone through a portal into the past or into some alternate dimension and crash landed on an island full of dinosaurs. And so you represent the leaders of the groups of people from the cruise liner trying to make a life in this new place. That's the first game. And then there's a second game where now you've established a beachhead and a colony on this island, and now you're exploring the island. And so the second one is about going out and exploring what's on the island and what can people get out of it. Then the third and fourth games are currently in production and will be out soon, and those will represent 2 more stages of the epic. They do provide a rulebook to allow you to play from game 1 to game 2 so that you can have a unified story, although the game is meant to be playable as 4 separate games where you don't start with anything built in. You're just playing as you go. Perseverance is a bog standard example of the Mind Clash Games approach to huge game, lots of pieces, complex rules, interesting mechanisms that gather together, and that you have to kind of keep a lot of stuff in track as you work. The designers are Richard Amann, Thomas van de Ginst, Victor Peter, Wolf Planck, and David Turksy. So those 3 of those you'll recognize as the designers of Anachrony, and the other 2, I presume, brought Perseverance to Mind Clash, and then the other 3 worked with them enough that they share design credit. Like I said, looking forward to the 3rd and 4th ones. I've never actually played episode 2 though. We played episode 1. In terms of game type, I guess it is resource management, a little bit of push your luck, a little bit of sort of area control or competing for majorities, and just complicated rule sets. The game, if you bought the deluxe edition, which I did, it comes with little minis for everything, so you have a whole bunch of miniature dinosaurs and fancy tokens that you're moving around. I really like Perseverance. It's an interesting game. It is, though, my least favorite of the Mind Clash games I own. It is a little unwieldy, and the rules are pretty complicated. I did enjoy my play of it, and a Mind Clash game in general is better than a lot of games from a lot of companies, but not the best of their output. Nonetheless, I still had a good time. It was 2 years Dusty, 3 months, 4 days. And finally, I got to play Samurai Spirit. Samurai Spirit is a classic Antoine Bauza game from, I think, 2014. I don't know, it's weird to call it classic and have it be from 2014, but that's the way our gaming industry works. Yeah, it's 2014. When we were learning it, Rob, whose copy it was, hey Rob, introduced it as sort of, or he had read that it was kind of Ghost Stories light. And I can buy that. It is a tower defense game in which the players work together to try to defeat these ghosts or spirits or Ronin that are attacking this village, and you represent the samurai who are defending it. You each have like a supernatural creature you can turn into. So when you get injured to a certain point, then you level up into the supernatural creature and you get to cause all kinds of trouble to the incoming Ronin, or incoming enemies. There is, like I said, a bit of push your luck to the game where you are deciding how much risk to take, and you kind of want to push your luck, but if you push it too far, you could get killed. If any one of the players gets killed, you lose. But if you take a certain amount of damage, then you get to power up into your mega form, and that's better for the game overall. You're also trying to cover a bunch of tokens, a bunch of different symbols in the cards that you take. It's an interesting game. Once you understand how to play it, it runs pretty smooth, but the rulebook is garbage, which is also true of Ghost Stories, so that fits. If it's like Ghost Stories, it also has a bad rulebook. But what I mean by garbage is it's just really poorly organized, so even after you read it, you kind of understand how to play, and then when you come across a question, you can't find the answer to that question, even though it is in the rulebook. Pretty emblematic of 2014 rulebooks, honestly. And I don't know if it has to do with the translation, that it would have been in French or German originally, French I assume, with Antoine Bauza. And then in translating, maybe they didn't reorganize to fit expectations or needs of a different reading community. I don't know. I don't know enough about translation to speak to that. But I do know that I did not like the rulebook to Samurai Spirit. That said, I thought the game was fun. Not amazing. I think Ghost Stories is better, but an interesting push your luck element, and frankly much shorter. Ghost Stories has a longer play and is wickedly hard, whereas Samurai Spirit feels hard but not unbeatable. So as a light filler push your luck game, I think it really fits the bill, and the art is cool. So yeah, if you get a chance to play Samurai Spirit, I wouldn't turn it down if I were you. Well, that's the end of the episode for today. What games have you played recently? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and show us some love in the Pick Up and Deliver Guild over there. Let us know what games you've been playing lately, and if you've played any of the games I mentioned today, Metro, Samurai, Samurai Spirit, or Perseverance Episode 1, shout it out in the forum and let me know if I was right or wrong with my assessment. But until next time, thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.